And here we go. All right. We are coming to you only 2 days late.
Whoops.
And appropriately with a what? How do you spend your time? Well, we did not spend our time live streaming on Wednesday, but we're spending our time live streaming today.
That's right.
Time is precious. We're still giving you the time. We're just giving it to you late.
That's right. I hope that's all right with you guys. We're human. We're
Yeah.
fallible. It
Right.
happens.
Yeah, it does. It happens. Happens a lot. So today we're going to be talking about the preciousness of time. And please comment in if you're there. Okay, great. We got Life Wilder. Is that right? If Wilder? Gosh. Type in how to pronounce your name. And we're getting like broken icons, which is kind of weird. But that's
Interesting.
That's
Oh,
probably
yeah, I
like,
see that. Maybe it's like an emoji that's
yeah, it's
not
probably
coming through.
it's probably some Facebook emoji that just doesn't make it. Hello, Michelle. All
Hello.
right.
Hi, friends. We're so happy you're here.
All right. Yeah. So
So, Garrett, why don't you, tell us about your dream. I'm actually quite curious. You guys are hearing it at the same time I am. This dude had some dream that's like the topic of the podcast. Let's do this.
Yeah. Okay. So I had this dream, and in the dream there was four of us, and we're sort of part of this group. So there's more than four around us, but then there's like this four of us that were kind of I don't know, tuned into each other, and we realized, and we had these shakers. It was like salt. What is it called? Cinnamon and sugar shakers. So like 4 bottles. Each of us had like 4 bottles of cinnamon and sugar shakers, and there might have been cinnamon in one, sugar in another, half cinnamon and sugar in another, like different combinations of cinnamon and sugar. Which the only thing I can say about that is that was in my grandmother's kitchen. It was the coolest, one of my favorite things in my grandmother's kitchen was the cinnamon and sugar when I was a kid. And we were in this circle, and we discovered that as we started shaking the cinnamon and sugar in the right sort of sequence, with the right amount of love, like we started pouring our love into it, that this music began. And it would actually start creating this music. And the music was Time in a Bottle. So if you want to hear the music that was in the dream, just, YouTube, Google Time in a Bottle, and you can start listening.
I could put time in a bottle. No?
Yeah,
Nobody?
Yeah, that's exactly it, yes. It's beautiful. Right. We could sing it to you. We could sing it to you right now.
But we'll spare you. We don't want to hurt
actually, it was
your
actually
ears.
pretty good, Shereen. So
Oh,
it was
thank
actually
you,
pretty
Garrett.
good. Yeah. But yeah, if I could put time in a bottle, I would spend that time with you, and that's what was going. That was the song, and what we were discovering as we just played with these shakers was that like everybody has a role in this little family that we had, and everybody does their shakers however they like, but if you do them with love, like the music got louder and more beautiful, and the whole group, like, it spiraled, and everyone else in the group did their shakers better, and we started doing the spiraling thing where we're all like doing our shakers better, and it became sort of like, I don't know, have you ever seen some kids who are really good at like patty cake or whatever, like one of those hand games, and like they're just doing all these wild orchestrations of hand movements and stuff, but it's like a dance, and like this dance just kept getting more and more ecstatic and beautiful, and this music kept getting louder. And honestly, like YouTube, Google like Time in a Bottle and listen to that while you're watching this, and that song just kept growing and growing, and like we realized after every set we did it, because it was about the length of the song, we're like, whoa, let's do that again. And we do it again, but we learned that the more love you put into it, the better it got. And the better it got, the more we wanted to go live another lifetime with each other. Like, and then what I sort of realized in the dream is that every time we did this, it was a lifetime. Like this was a family, and we had this lifetime together, and we were a family together. And we learned that, if we weren't coordinated, if we weren't really paying attention to each other, if we weren't really giving our love to the little unit we'd created, the music never happened. It wasn't so good. But the more we started to pour our hearts and our love into the way we did these shakers together, it like created such an incredibly beautiful experience that it would end and we go, oh, you want to go live another lifetime together? And we'd like go live another lifetime together. And so the reason I bring this up is because it was probably the most powerful dream I've had in a while. And I just woke up very stirred by it at 3:33 a.m. And it's just, I think it just brought home to me how precious our time together is, and when we are with the people we care about, like how important it is for you to just pour your love into that relationship, to give your all in whatever your role with the Shakers is. So if your role is being a mom or being a dad or being a kid, being their child or being in a relationship with someone, it's like whatever your role is, being a brother, being a sister, being a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, if you're spending time with someone, like that's your most precious resource. And if you're going to be spending your most precious resource, you might as well put as much love into it as possible, because when you put the love into it, the music surges. And when the music surges, it just gets so fucking beautiful. And so it's like, just do your part, like do your shaker, like put your cinnamon and sugar into the circle and like just play your role and play it beautifully. And that's love. Like love isn't just like sitting there like, I don't know, passively beaming love to people, although that could be a way of doing it. But it's love is doing your shaker bits as well as possible. So there was a bit of skill involved. There was a bit of discipline involved. It's like not just like showing up and sitting there in a circle and letting it happen to you. It's like showing up and participating as a member of the band and playing your part of the orchestra, playing your part in the band. If your guitar shows up and he doesn't play his guitar well, it doesn't matter how much love he might have in his heart, it's going to throw everybody off. So it's like the love also is in discipline, in playing your role in your family and your relationships well.
Interesting. I love that, Garrett. And that's so beautiful. I actually just am like on the heels of a weekend retreat. I don't know what to even call it, but me and my husband went away because we had our 4-year anniversary. So my mom watched the kiddos for the weekend, and me and my hubs got to go just like be alone and not be caretaking children all weekend. And we just had such a nice time, just like being together and being in connection in a way that we don't often get to because we're like managing children or just like feeding people or doing dishes or whatever. So it just kind of reminds me of what you're talking about, because I really feel like we were just so in gratitude for just the time to be together and be in connection without interruptions. Not quite the shaking, like we didn't really shake much. But maybe we did. Maybe we were like shaking up the role of husband and wife more, like maybe we oftentimes play the role of like mother or father or provider or caretaker or whatever. But we were like, we got to make sure we still shake it up when it comes to hubs and wives. So I get
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think that's it. It's like, in any family, especially a young family, the parents set the tone for how that home feels and all the dynamics in the home. And if mom and dad aren't getting along so good, the kids really feel that. That's the bubble. That's the environment that they live in. That's what they're growing in. It's like the soil that they're growing in is fundamentally your relationship between the parents, and then how that impacts your parents' relationship with you and all the relationships. But it's like you're setting the tone, and your shakers aren't they're not literally cinnamon and sugar shakers or instruments as we were using them. Like we were using them kind of like these percussive instruments that somehow emanated this beautiful song. But they're the dynamics in your relationship, and there's some sort of little dance that you and your husband do that is like unique to you, that reflects the love that you have between each other. And that little dance could just be like the cadence between the syllables that you speak to each other in, the tone of voice that you use, the way that you hold each other, the way that you look at each other, the way that you laugh together, the way that you make choices together, the passions you share, whatever those are. And definitely when you're running a household, it's so distracting from that dance, that dance is what sort of creates the music and the love that fills your home. So it's like you need to do that dance on the regular.
Yeah.
Stay in touch with the dance. Stay in touch with the shakers. You
It
know.
was it was so nice to it was a great dance. I mean, we loved that weekend. We were so happy. But I have to bring up Shirley here because she's saying, which I find very interesting, and I'd love to hear your male perspective, Garrett. Men are bad at just sitting there with potential love and friendships around them. They're waiting and they don't connect. They're kind of like waiting for the other person to do the work. What do you think about this, Garrett?
I think that can be true. I think it also can be true of women. I think it, I think in any, or in a lot of relationships, there can be the imbalance of the giver and the taker. So, where Shirley might experience men being the taker, Shirley, you might just happen to be initially drawn to men who fit that role in your life. Then and you might find it repulsive the men who really want to give to you, the ones who really want to connect and cultivate the love and the friendship. Like, you might not find those guys attractive, and so that's sort of the Groucho Marx syndrome. I wouldn't want to be part of any club that would have me as a member. So I think both sexes experience that feeling of, wow, I really could just pour my whole heart into cultivating this relationship and making this relationship beautiful and having all the love and connection. And then, there's that other partner who might just not be down for that. And like, what is that all about? One time I had a friend who said, in every relationship, there's a reacher and a settler. And so, like, the settler is the person who's a little bit bored with the relationship, but it's contenting enough to them, and the reacher is a little bit feels like the relationship's just a little bit out of reach, and their partner doesn't seem to rise to the occasion as much. They don't seem to be as compelled to cultivate the relationship as you do. And so, like, what is that? There's like this little imbalance of power in the relationship. So the reacher feels a little bit less powerful in the relationship, is more likely to acquiesce, and the settler feels a little bit like maybe over entitled in the relationship, and is likely to take their partner for granted and not invest as much in the relationship. And so that dynamic can happen a lot. And I think, Shirley, what you're describing there sounds a little bit like that dynamic, not like a male-female thing, because I've also seen men be incredibly romantic. I think romance is, if you really go back a few hundred years, like, all the writers of romantic works tended to be men, like Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet and all that stuff. Like, women weren't even really allowed to learn to read, let alone write, and therefore all these romantic things that we kind of fairy tales and whatnot that go back in time very likely were at some point at least penned by romantic men, if not actually invented by them. And so therefore I think there's a lot of romantic men out there. There's a lot of men who would be that romantic with you and for you and invested in your relationship. But then the question is, really, would you be attracted to them? That's the rub. Maybe that guy has a big fat mole on his face, or who knows what, Maybe his breath smells. Maybe he's not in great shape. Yeah.
Yeah, surely. Feel free to chime in and tell us your thoughts, because that's very interesting to me, the entire thing.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's powerful when you know who the reacher is and who the settler is, because then you can, I don't know, just be empowered to just kind of like work around that. Like, it's very obvious to me that, like, I'm the reacher and Kenny's the settler, and like, I don't have any problems with that. I'm more just like, okay, yeah, like, I'm the one who's going to make sure we go to date night weekly. I'm the one who's going to make sure that we go on our little anniversary weekend and cultivate that. I'm the one who's going to make sure we go to couples therapy, because it's intolerable to me to be in an unhappy marriage. And so I do what I got to do to make sure we're in a happy marriage. And if that means I have to, like, I don't know, implement these things as like the reacher person, I'm like, that's fine. I don't mind,
Mm-hmm. And I think, and actually, that can change during a relationship, and sometimes it's very disruptive if it changes. So I've heard accounts of the husband and wife who got good and comfortable with each other, and the wife gained a bunch of weight, and but everything was kind of fine, and then she decided to like start working out a lot, and all of a sudden she's getting a lot of attention from other men, and then the husband starts getting jealous or whatever, or vice versa. Same thing. Like the man has some uptick in his career, or he gets in great shape, and all of a sudden he's getting more attention, and like that shift from wait, who's the reacher now, who's the settler now, like can happen and be very disruptive to a relationship. If you're not used to being the reacher, you might feel very insecure. Sometimes settlers are settlers because it's maybe they're less have less faith than the reacher. So it's like a reacher has to kind of have faith that that person loves them, even though they don't express that love as frequently. Like you have to have more faith, and yet if the tables get turned, Shereen, and all of a sudden you're out on the town with what's his name? What do we do the show on? What's his name? I always forget his name. Channing Tatum. Start doing a radio show with Channing Tatum or whatever, and all of a sudden you're getting all this fan mail and whatever, and now Kenny goes, yeah, see how he handles it, because like that's the thing. It's like some people, that's way out of their comfort zone to have someone, to be in a relationship with someone where they feel a little bit I don't know how to say it, but just like that person could easily upgrade from me, if you will. And that's a terrible way of like thinking of a human being, but it's like that is, I think, sort of part of the fundamental metrics, the ego metrics of reacher versus settler. Whereas the other side of it is what my dream was about, is you just find those beautiful souls in your life that you just dance with, that you just like make music with, that like your heart's just like something just spontaneously comes forth from all of you, from both of you or all of you in a unit. In my unit, it was like this unit of 4, the circle of people, and it just like out of our participation with each other, it just started spiraling up, and this love spiral just made everything more and more beautiful. And that is nothing to do with the ego metrics of who's participating and who isn't. It's like it's evoked. So to then totally contradict what we've been saying is, that you have that man in your life, women were behind the men telling them what to write. It's possible. Yeah. So,
I love that.
Yeah. But it's like, if you have that partner who seems a little aloof and not really putting in the effort or investing in the love and romance and connection, it's like, well, what can you do to evoke that? So again, that's part of the dance. So it's like, okay, maybe if you're just sitting there with watching the TV and eating Doritos in your sweats, and they're just more interested in the TV than you, okay, what happens if you walk in that room with some lingerie on or whatever, or like pretty yourself up, and that kind of thing? Is like, well, that's going to be different. And Shereen and I were talking about your weekend away or your day away, and we're talking about how you could even do a day away, like send the kids off with the grandparents and spend a day at home. And that can be just as wonderful and cheaper than spending it on a hotel. But the problem with it is when you're home, you've got your computers and your TVs and your Xboxes and your phones and your habits. The habits are worse than the devices. It's like you're used to plopping on the couch, turning on the TV or turning on the Xbox or whatever it is. And as soon as you go into the devices or the computer or whatnot, now you're no longer hearing the melody of your music together. You're no longer participating in the shaker dance. You're no longer like fanning the flame of that spiraling love up and up. And so that's the danger of trying to spend time with your loved ones in settings that have lots of distractions, everything from your phones to your TVs to your Xboxes to your computers to your careers, whatever. And so I think, and there's some wise community gatherings that say everybody put your phone in the basket. I actually haven't even been to one of those, but I've heard of them, and I think it's a good idea. It's like, okay, in this classroom, everybody's phone goes in the basket, or in this party or dinner party, everyone's phone goes in the basket. It's like that is a powerful tool, because as soon as the devices are out of the way, you can start tuning into each other, and that's when the music begins. That's when you start hearing
Mhm.
the melody in each other's movements and voices and actions, and that's where you can start riffing on that and amplifying that. And that's kind of what I got in the dream, is that we have this opportunity with the people that we spend time with to start creating that dance. And the way you create the dance is being really tuned into each other.
Mhm.
So
It's beautiful. So Shirley replied. She said, "Yes, very interesting reply. It's true. Men who are romantic, I see as having a motive that they imagine I might not agree with." So that's interesting. And
what
then, go
they
ahead.
have a motive that they imagine you might not agree with. Are you following that, Shereen, or um,
Not completely. I think what I think what she was trying to say is men who are romantic, like she sees them as having a motive. Yeah, basically that like might not agree with her. That she might think that they have like a weird motive, and so she gets turned off. So you might be right about the fact that she likes dudes that are takers. That's how I take it. I'm not certain
Okay,
that's
yeah, no, I think that's very reasonable. I think there are a lot of sort of quote romantic men who are doing it because they saw it on TV or they saw it in a movie, and they think, okay, you buy her buy her flowers and chocolates on Valentine's Day. And I know women who go, that's the last thing I want, is to be bought flowers on the pre-prescribed day that you're supposed to do that. Like, that's not romantic, that's just conformist. And that romantic would be, and I know women say, don't even buy me flowers, buy me a turkey sandwich, or like get me something that's like genuine. Uh, and then at the same
Mhm.
time, that a woman could say that, and if there's that moment where you genuinely want to buy her flowers, that's romantic. But it has to
Yeah.
be like come from you in that moment, in that spontaneous moment. It has to be part of the dance. And I think that's what this dream was about, is that if we just do things by some sort of rote programming, like this is what we're supposed to do, this is how we're supposed to behave, this is what romance is supposed to be like, this is what a date is supposed to be, all that supposed to stuff is nonsense and it's a waste of time, except that it can create a little bit of structure or an environment for the real thing to happen, the authenticity. And the authenticity is like tuning in to the very subtle movements and gestures and intonations in the voice of those who you deeply care about, and spending the time with them to start creating this dance with them where every moment, everything in that dialogue, everything in how you're spending time together, it just lifts the energy and the love and the light a little brighter, and the music gets louder. And what I mean by louder is like that song like just starts like feeling real, and it's like you're in this wonderful moment of heaven together. You're creating this bubble of heaven with one
Mhm.
another. And that in order to do that, you need at least two to be, two or more to be tuning into each other with that really soulful intention, and really creating the space for that spontaneous dance to happen.
Mhm. Sanella Martinson says everything is based on the relationship to oneself. My belief is that when we expect certain behaviors from people, we're simply reflecting what we ourselves need to bring to light. So getting stuck in the he should or she should is a way of deflecting one's own truth. By being truthful to yourself, you will build authentic connections. It actually sounds like she was saying similar to what you were just
Yeah.
saying of like,
Yeah, and I was actually, I might have been riffing on what she was saying too. Because I did read your comment right before I said that. And Kivo, yes, we're open to questions, so fire away.
do
Um,
it.
I live each day as my last. I live in a war zone for the past 3 years. Wow. Okay, Jumana, I'd love to hear. Air jets are bombing us as I type. Where are you, Jumana? I'd love
Wow.
to hear where you are, and I hope you are safe. I mean, right now I'm actually just sending a prayer in your direction for you and your family and everyone who is in your area, that you are safe and that you are protected, and that those air jets don't drop any bombs anywhere near you. This is this sounds traumatic and it sounds dangerous. I'd love to know where you are, Jomana, and but don't give away your position if you're actually somewhere you don't want people to know. But anyway, yeah. And so this is, but Jumana is probably intimately aware of the preciousness of your time And that's what this is about. It's like, so in that war zone that you're in, who are you with? And like, this might, if these are your last moments on earth in this incarnation, how do you spend them? And the way that I spent my time in this dream was like how I would spend them. It's like, this was like sublime. This was the perfect expression of love and communion with those that I loved. Like, I fell into communion with these people, um, and then our dance together was just so beautiful. It just was like, I would do this lifetime after lifetime with you. So Jumana, I hope you're with those you would spend lifetime after lifetime with, and I hope you are finding a way to savor the precious moments you have with them. And I hope that you are safe and you stay safe, and that you get yourself and your family and loved ones to safety if you need to. And I think a lot of people who are on this podcast or on this live stream are praying with us for you. So it's always good to throw in stuff if you need prayers. You can get prayers right here. Just say what's going on, and we will pray with you. I think we have someone coming from Germany that said their English is bad. I missed what their comment was. And I spend my time making sure all my dreams come true. I've never felt so alive. So that's wonderful. So like, you're there, sometimes we feel our most alive when we are faced with our own mortality, when we are in danger, when we do realize that every moment is precious. So yeah, kudos to you, Jumana. That's a great way to be. What is your opinion on blockchain and people getting awake? Okay, well, I think blockchain is great, fun, decentralized technology that's pretty overhyped. At least in the hype cycle right now, I think it's overhyped. I think there are things that'll come out of it that are powerful and pivotal, including what it's already done for Bitcoin and Ethereum and decentralized currencies and transactions and recording of things in a decentralized database kind of way. I think all that's really whiz bang cool and great. And at the same time, I think artificial intelligence is going to be way more powerful than blockchain. I think artificial intelligence will invent things that are way more powerful than blockchain. And then what was the other thing? And people getting awake. I think this is what this dream was about for me, the irony of a dream about getting awake. But the dream was that with love and communion, you wake up. Like, that's how people get awake, is through love and communion, not through being shaken awake. You can't scream at somebody to wake up and actually have them wake up. They'll just shut down. You kind of need to invite them to wake up by singing a sweet lullaby in their ear, or working, making music with them, making love with them, making light and beauty with them. It's like, that is, I think, what awakens all of us. I'd rather be single than be in a stagnant, complacent relationship. Right. At least you're single. when you say you're single, if you're in a stagnant, complacent relationship, you're single anyway. You're kind of lonely and by yourself. You just think you're in a relationship, but
Yeah.
it's
almost worse. Yeah, it's almost worse. Like, if you're single, you just have freedom. You're just doing you fill your time however you want. But if you're in a relationship and it's complicated and there is sort of like disrespect and disconnect, then it's like an insult, It's like, I'm making myself available to you and you're just like rejecting me constantly. Like, I might as well just be single.
Well, and I think the other thing is just the idea of relationship is such a construct. I mean, we're in relationship with everybody, like everyone on the planet. We're in relationship with, in one way or another. So then, when you're like, well, I'm in romantic relationship with this person, it's like, yes, you are when you are in a romantic moment with that person, and when you're thinking about that person, when they're thinking about you and all that beauty. But like, if that's not happening, then are you really in a romantic relationship with them, or are you just, in some construct with them? And so,
what's the difference between a construct and a relationship?
It's a construct's an idea about a relationship. It's not the actual, like, so like you and I, Shereen, we're talking here. We're in a relationship talking, and like this is a moment where we're communing with Michelle and Kivo and Michael
And
um,
Jumana.
yeah, and right, and so and we're all in some sort of communal relationship right now where we're sharing time together, our most precious resource. And yet, as soon as this thing is over, we go and do our other stuff. Now, if I was really hooked into Jumana and in a romantic relationship with Jumana where I'm really attached to Jumana, and now I'm thinking like, oh gosh, I hope Jumana's safe, and when is Jumana gonna call me, and all this sort of construct stuff that's not really about the soul connection between Jumana and I, but about like the needs that attachment and the idea that somehow we're in a relationship creates this pressure to have all these functional. I don't know. Take it away, Shereen. I mean, you kind of getting my
That's
gist
really
there.
interesting. Okay, so it sounds to me like what you're saying is like in this moment we are all communing and that's a true moment of spending time together and being in relationship. When we go away from this, our egoic mind, the ways in which maybe I'm like, well, hey, Garrett didn't call me back, or I texted him about that thing we were going to do and he didn't say anything back. Like that is maybe my mental construct of how I believe you should behave in relationship. Is that
Yes,
am I onto something here?
yes, yes. Keep going.
So, okay, so if that's the case, then that means that like when you're just being present in the moment, that's the truth of your relationship. And when you are maybe being in anxiety or in overthinking, that's
Yeah.
like your own bullcrap.
Yeah, and I love Michael's like, this is no construct. This is real. Our relationship is real. How could you say that, Garrett? Michael, I didn't mean any offense. We're you and me like brothers, man. This is real. This is no construct. This is flesh and blood. This is reality here. We're inseparable, Michael. Never fear. No, what I think what you're saying is right on, Sharon. It's like we have, and this goes into our relationship with other people and our relationship with God. It's like you have the relationship, the reality of your relationship, and then you have your ideas about the relationship. And the ideas come a lot from culture and circumstance and whatnot. So it's like in some cultures, the ideas about how you can relate to somebody before you're married and all that are very strict. And in other cultures, the way that you're supposed to relate to people in terms of the way you text them and stuff like that, there's all these dances and things that you're supposed to do in the way that your relationship is defined. And then there's all, and all those things are ideas about the relationship, nothing to do with the reality of the relationship. And it's the idea about the relationship that I think really gets in the way of real communion, because real communion is just surrendering all the pretenses, letting go of all the ideas, and opening your eyes and ears and heart to the reality. And when you do that, now you're tuned in. And when you're tuned in to each other, that's where the little hints of the music, the melody, you can hear it, you see it, you feel it. And then you tune into that and you start sharing that, harmonizing with it, being part of it, co-creating it, amplifying it. And as you amplify your attunement with them, that attunement amplification is like this beautiful spiral of love, and that is the real relationship, and that is the thing that you could spend an eternity immersed in, and just in complete awe, wonder, and love for an eternity, and never want it to end, because that's real relationship. And there's no drama, and there's no dynamics. I mean, the dynamics are like pure love dynamics, but there's no like, did they text me, or you should always do that, or you should have done it this way, or you're not supposed to talk to those people, or you're not supposed to get with that person, or whatever. It's like, yeah, there's all these sort of rules that we put around our relationships to protect our hearts and protect our sensibilities and conform to our cultures and avoid jealousy and avoid heartbreak and avoid hurt and avoid this, that, and the other thing, and quell our fears. But that's not real communion. Real communion is when you put all that aside and you just play your instrument. You just do your shaker. You just you know, really tune in and love the people you're with.
So when I get mad at my husband for being on his cell phone too much, or like when we're all sitting down at dinner and he has his cell phone out, I'm being in my construct.
So when you get pissed that he's got his cell phone out,
Yeah, like I have like a big thing about like when we're eating a meal, you just freaking connect. You just hang out, you eat, you talk, face to face. Like this is our time together.
yeah,
Sometimes, like we'll be talking about something in conversation and he'll go, "Oh, I need to look that up on IMDb." And I'm like, "You actually really don't. Like I just want to have a conversation with you." Or
yeah,
he'll be responding to texts about whatever other thing that's like unrelated.
yeah.
So when I'm pissed about this is me being in the construct. Yes?
Being pissed is being in the construct, but also recognizing that when Kenny's in the construct of whatever, he's in distraction. It's like that. There's honesty there. Like okay, in to go back to the communion experience, it takes two to tango.
Yeah.
It takes two or more to immerse yourself in that love dance, right? And so if Kenny's not tuning into that, and you're like, I want to do the love dance, and Kenny's doing the text thing or distraction thing, it's like, well, then you have every right to be aware that you're not doing the dance that you want to do. That
Like
he's
nobody's
not tuning
dancing
in.
with me.
Yeah.
Why aren't you dancing? It's like I'm dancing by myself,
Right.
punk.
Right. So then the question is, do you have a construct that says you're not allowed to go dance with someone who wants to dance with you?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So we're talking like mindset shit now. It's like, oh, this is interesting, Gary.
Yeah. Because like, okay, Kenny's there on his text. He's busy texting and Xboxing or whatever, right? And Channing there is out in the front yard, like with his shirt off, doing the yard work, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna go and do the love dance with Channing. He's there, and then like he's ready to dance, and the music's playing, and it's like, oh, we've got this moment. It's like, okay, now is Kenny gonna be cool with that? I doubt it. You'd have to be a very open-minded guy. I mean, you do live in California, so it's very possible, actually, and the likelihood of it working out is probably highest around where you live. Maybe that works. But if it doesn't work, then what would it do? It would be like, well, I think if I were Kenny, I'd wake up from texting and be like, no, honey, I'll dance with you. Like I'd rather be the one dancing with you than know you're off dancing with Channing. So it's like, okay, well, there's
Fucking
that choice
Channing.
point.
Always all by the wayside, just waiting,
He's just waiting for you. He's just waiting for you, Shereen. He's waiting for you to come single again. He's like, I got myself back on the market. When are you coming back on the market? But no, I think that's really that's a big part of even in my dream, it's just like we chose to be there in this communion experience with each other, to play these shakers, cinnamon and sugar shakers. It's like, and the music would come. It's like, but that was everybody who was in that circle chose to be there and got to re-choose after the song was over, like whether they want to keep doing it. And it was so beautiful. It's like, yeah, let's do that again. Let's keep doing it. So I think there is, and this is a hard reality to face, but it's like our constructs about what relationships are often say, even if your shaker partner doesn't want to shake it anymore, you're not allowed to experience the love and beauty and grace and wonder and communion of shaking it with another because you're married to them.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, well, that kind of sucks for the person who still wants to shake, Yeah. And so then what seems like a reasonable course of action say, well, if they're not willing to shake, you have sort of the soul right, like, you were incarnated into this world and you came into this world wanting to experience love and communion and romance and light and all that. And if your partner refuses to let you experience that, then it's like, well, or at least refuses to engage in experiencing that with you, it's like, well, where is the point where you say, okay, but your duty to your own heart and soul is to give your heart and soul what it is you want to experience in this precious lifetime that you have.
Interesting, Garrett. We do also have a little debate happening here. We have Jumana who said,
Mm,
I think we should all treat each other the same way we want others to treat us, kind and
mm,
understanding, especially when we are in our worst times.
mm-hmm.
And then Aaron said, I disagree with treating others the way we want to be treated. That's really self centered. We should be treating others the way they want to be treated.
Yeah, I
This is
love
really
that.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
love that, and I think that's you know, that's what Aaron is like really tapped into. You know, what is it we're talking about here? Like when you're in communion with someone, you're not. Again, we were talking about the difference between the construct, and that's like what you think people should want based on what you want or what you've been taught women want or what you've been taught men want or whatever. So you think like he wants the game on and a steak and cheese, which might be right or it might be completely off because that's just a construct. Or he wants to be treated like I would want to be treated, again, which might be right or might be totally a construct. But then when you really tune into someone, you know what they want. You can sense it, you can feel it. And you can attune to it, and maybe you don't know it completely, but it might prompt you to ask the right questions or to shift gears just the right way so that they feel safe enough to tell you what they want. And I think that is the communal experience that we're talking about. That communion experience, not communion experience that we're talking about is like the more you're in communion with one, it's like the more that love just grows and the love illuminates all these hidden things, and answers and spontaneous choices become miraculous because it's like, wow, you're just so tuned into each other. You can anticipate each other's needs.
Interesting. So, on the needs note,
Yeah.
Michael actually asked an interesting question. He said, how can I know everyone enough to know what they need until I
Yeah.
spend time with them?
Right. I mean, you can and you can't. It's like if you are really tuned in to a higher power or to your heart and soul, I think you have a deep intuition, which even a perfect stranger who you've never seen before, like within a blink of an eye, you might know exactly what they need. And you might not know it on a conscious level, but you might have an impulse to connect with them in exactly the way they need to be connected with. So I think we do have a sixth sense, a deep intuition, a spiritual guidance that does know what others need in ways that you couldn't calculate. And then at the same time, the more your constructs get in the way, and this often happens the more you get to know somebody, because then you start to think you know what they need, and you start to think you know how they tick, and you start to think you know what they want. Once you think you've got somebody figured out, that's where you have to be really careful, because everyone is kind of this magical, miraculous, spontaneous being underneath it all that may no longer need or want the things that they always needed and wanted up until 2 seconds ago. So it's like you kind of need to be aware that getting to know someone sometimes is just getting to know their ego or getting to know their construct, and it gives your mind or your intellect almost too much of an advantage over your heart and soul and the spontaneous intuition you can have by just tuning into someone's being.
This might be like a total weird way to go right now, but like, what if someone, because like what if someone is actually unable to tune inward or to tune into others, and they actually, let's say, are just like, just really out of touch, or like are a
Mm,
narcissist or something. There's
yeah,
something that actually blocks them from being connected or knowing what other people need or
yeah,
experiencing empathy. Like,
yeah.
what do you think about that?
I think we're broadcasting through that medium. That's what Facebook was born of, is an autistic man who, or was a young man at the time, who couldn't comprehend what women or girls needed or people needed, like was very sort of emotionally and sort of socially disconnected in a way, just couldn't figure it out, and so stuck in his intellect as sort of someone on the autistic spectrum or Asperger's spectrum, that he invented this mechanical way of understanding people, which is what Facebook is understanding people in relationships. It's like, how do we systematize it and turn it into programming and something logical that can be intellectually comprehended. And that's basically what Facebook is turning relationships and all this gooey sort of intuitive stuff into something that that someone who is very non-intuitive or not socially aware could digest and understand.
So basically, if you are unable to tune into people, just jump on Facebook and you're going to be all right.
Well, uh, or utilize that. Like, so if you're not unable to tune into people, chances are you're much better at tuning into technology or sort of difficult problems in that respect. And so realize that A, tuning into people takes practice. B, if you're anywhere on the spectrum, you're probably worse at it than you think you are. and so it takes self-awareness to start realizing just how bad at it you are. And then it takes sort of a commitment to growth and stretching yourself to start experiencing all of the heartbreak and loss and vulnerability that goes along with really communing with other people. And so you can move from sort of very autistic or emotionally removed or disconnected socially to very connected. But it's going to take intention from you and a desire to do it. And it's going to take a lot of courage, because really what it boils down to is courage. Your most intimate relationships require the most courage. You want to be intimate with people, that requires the most courage, because it also requires the most vulnerability. The flip side is, if you don't want to get into that, you can just go take over some corner of the technology world, because you're probably very good at handling technology and problems. So,
There you go.
yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So yeah, technology will stop us from connecting with people. Technology basically makes us more emotion. Now, I'm trying to think of a better word than autistic, because I think it's not fair to people who are, very, very autistic, or like, like autism as the fundamental disability. I have a wonderful little girl down the road. Say little, but she's like 20 something now. But she used to just, she used to be my little Klingon. She just hugged me. I used to be her camp counselor, and she would just, I was her hug box, and she's very autistic. And like, it's not fair to kind of group her with someone who just happens to be kind of Zuckerberg level autistic, where you just obviously don't know how to relate with people on a heart to heart level as easily, and so you make everything intellectual. And if you're one of those people, there is hope for you. It just takes work and it takes courage, because coming down from your intellect, which is like this kind of ivory tower designed to protect you from any pain or suffering or embarrassment or shame or what have you, and moving down into your heart, which has to let itself be courageous and vulnerable and open to all of those nasty emotions and all of those sort of heartbreaks and losses and shames and things of that sort. But that humility to live in your heart is the greatest juice of life. That's where the music comes from. That's where the communion has to go through.
So true, Garrett. And you are all heart, my friend.
I have Garrett Schmerett. He's autistic as fuck. So depends on who you get on any given moment,
Oh my gosh.
Get me working on the tech, and you'll watch all of that heart and soul just like dwindle behind the fuck mask. Oh, fuck this. Oh, fuck. How do we get this shit working? Fuck.
I just love that guy. Such a comedian, that Schmerett. Let me tell you.
Yeah. But it goes straight, like, and people are talking about ENFJ and INFJ and all that. It's like, so like my Garrett Schmerett is a T, and my heart and soul dude is an F. So I'd be like an ENFP if I'm like all heart and soul, and I'd be like an ENTJ if I'm just like really in my sort of entrepreneur alpha, get it done, fuck with technology, solve the problem. It's like, there's two of me. And I'm sure there's two of you somewhere, or multiples of all of us. Like, we're all a multiplicity of personas that live within us. And that's like, okay, well, which is the dominant one? And then ask yourself, should that one be the one who dictates, like, where you're going? Is that the rightful leader of your psychic enterprise, if you will? And I think often for us, Einstein, I think, was credited with saying in so many quotes these days, like Einstein said it and he really didn't. So I don't know if he really said this, but he was credited with saying that the intellect is like something like a powerful tool but a vicious powerful servant but a vicious master, or something like that. It's like the imagination should be the one that's like, in charge, and the intellect or the rational mind should be the one that's like serving the imagination. Obviously that was not his quote right there because I butchered the fuck out of it, but the essence of that statement, I think, has merit. Is like your imagination, your heart, your soul, like that should be who's just choosing in what direction your life goes and where you go and how you go. But then you can use your intellect and your sort of, I call it my Garrett Schmerit. I think Shereen actually helped me coin that phrase. But the Garrett Schmerit is my autistic self that figures shit out and avoids problems and catastrophes, and, beats my kids over the head for taking unnecessary risks and things like that, and really doesn't want any more issues to deal with, doesn't want any more problems, wants everything to just be like neat and buttoned up, and we got it all figured out, and we've strategically figured out the optimal way to do everything. Like, that's Garrett Schmerit, and he's not a lot of fun to be around, but he's a great servant. Like, if you need your computer fixed, like, that's the guy to do it. If you need your bills paid, he's the one to make sure that it gets done. Like, he's very, very useful. And yet, at the same time, if he's not, if he's not not modified, but if he's not moderated by the real me, my heart and soul, the real Garrett, the guy that you see or hear in the videos, in those speeches, then it's like all for nothing. It's like you might as well just be a robot,
Totally. So I looked up the quote: the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift.
Yeah.
So juicy, Garrett.
And Einstein may have said that.
Yes. Exactly. It was.
Probably didn't, though.
I know. Somebody said it, and then Einstein got the credit. Whatever.
It's like, I mean, you want your quote. If you ever want to like get a quote out there and have people believe it, add Einstein to the Einstein said it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, if he said it, then it's certainly something worth listening to.
Yeah. All right. So where does that leave us? What next? Okay. So, I mean, I feel like we have a few minutes left, 10 to 20, I would, by my clock, is a probably good ending time. But I think that I don't know. Where do you want to go with this one, Shereeni?
Well, Kelly says, thank you for sharing. You bring me hope, which I love that kind of feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael wanted to, he's so funny. I saw it earlier. It's already passed, but he was like, don't worry, Garrett. They have artificial intelligence that'll write code for you now. So you're going to be all right. Yeah.
Well, and that really is, I mean, this is going to be the weird new moment when technology just sort of takes over itself and fixes itself. Self-healing technology, self-managing technology, all that. And then the real question is it going to be the hyper autists of our societies and our communities that can manage this technology and sort of go toe-to-toe with it and actually stay maybe not a step ahead, but like up with it enough to handle it? Probably not for long. And then it's gonna be like, well, then what are we? And we're gonna become like pets. And what makes a good pet? Like, if you want your dog not to be like, I mean, unless you're training your dog for some stupid dog show in an abusive way. I don't know. I don't mean to judge, but it's like, if you're training your animal to do tricks that entertain humans as kind of like a for show thing, that seems like, okay, that'd be like kind of the Garrett Schmerit of your animal. Like, you're forcing your animal to intellectually learn to do things that are kind of beyond it. But it's like, I think why people love dogs is not because the dog can do tricks, but because the dog genuinely loves you. Like, the dog is all heart and soul. and they would talk, same is true for bunnies and cats and birds and any pet that you really develop a connection with. It's like that's why we love these pets, hedgehogs. It's because they represent a kind of simple love that we tend to forget, as all of us as human beings sort of do fall somewhere in that autistic spectrum where our intellect sometimes overshadows our hearts and souls and causes us to do robotic, what we're calling relationships, like we were saying.
Oh, the construct.
Yeah, there's following constructs as opposed to the true organic music, beauty, and tempo of our hearts and souls.
I totally get that.
Mm.
Michelle asked you a question, like just kind of a personal question. She wanted to know if you ever use crystals to protect yourself.
I don't think I do. I have a rosary somewhere. It's probably upstairs that often I'll put around my neck. You might have seen it on like you've seen the beads or whatever in other shows. That rosary is from Medjugorje. Like, I don't know, somewhere along the lines I got in my mind that like that rosary had special spiritual protective properties to it. But again, I think that's also just superstition. Like, your greatest protection is you, the light inside you. And we've talked before about the idea of spiritual protection. I think there's kind of two modalities of sort of inherent modalities of spiritual protection. One is like to create a bubble or a shield around yourself. And I would put crystals in that category of something that kind of gets between you and the boogeyman or the negative mojo or whatever. And and that can be effective. I do believe it can be effective. That's why I wore my rosary, for years. That's why I had a gold chain with a crucifix on it for years. It's like all of us have that need to feel protected, and I think those of us who are sensitive to the spiritual realm recognize that there are kind of these dark forces, demonic forces, boogeyman, negative mojo, or Ouija, or whatever you want to call it. Like, there's definitely something out there that can be very negative, and if it gets into you, it can kind of turn you negative, and we all want to avoid that, so we create these things. But the bigger opportunity is to realize that at your core is the great light, that you are a fragment or a splinter of the great light, and that your particular splinter of the great light, that spark of life that is in you, part of the great spark, is deep inside you. And the more you cultivate that light and that love, that shines from within you and creates a sort of radiant, explosive, if you will, light that comes out of your heart and soul, and that just shines away all the darkness. So you don't need the shields, you don't need the crystals, you don't need the prayers and the genuflection and the rosaries or holy water or whatever. It's because like the light from within you, the pure radiant white light of love, can just shine so brightly it just eradicates any darkness in its path. And the beauty of that is you're not protecting yourself from other people, you're healing other people. Your light is shining on them and healing those dark spirits, or your light is shining on the darkness and healing it. And I think that's somewhat a better, more heroic way of being than trying to put ourselves in the bubble, if you will, of protecting ourselves from the bad mojo. And I'm not saying you shouldn't protect yourself from the bad mojo. I think when we're feeling weak or vulnerable, that can be really helpful. But I think the greater opportunity is to summon the light in yourself, the love in yourself, to just become this radiant being that just shines away the darkness wherever you go.
I love that. That's beautiful, Garrett. So,
what else we got?
On this subject of like shaking and time and like communing and the relationship versus a construct, if we were kind of, and I know we don't have to like wrap up right this second, but if you were to give closing thoughts or even maybe action steps, like, how we did the connection challenge, like what are your thoughts on like how we could sort of like give people a little something to take away?
I think that the takeaway would be like, go listen to this Time in a Bottle song I think it's so beautiful. And the heart behind the song, the heart in the song, the sweetness of the song, something so sweet and beautiful in the song. And meditate with it. Like, look, close your eyes and meditate with it, and just imagine yourself in like perfect communion with at least one other being, or more. You know, it could be two, three, four, whatever. Imagine yourself in perfect communion with those beings to such a degree that the words of that song saying, if I could take every moment from here to eternity and put it in a bottle, I would, so that I could spend every of that one of those moments with you. So whoever it is that you're imagining you're in communion with, that communion becoming so beautiful and so intensely loving that you actually could mean those words with that person, that you would actually say, this is such a perfect moment of love and communion with you that I would take every moment from here to eternity and spend it doing this with you. And like, that is the essence of the dream, was like, that's possible, that this is something, and that you can find those special people in your life that fit that bill. And maybe it lasts an eternity, or maybe it lasts a day. It doesn't really matter, because that moment echoes in eternity. Like, that moment that you have that communion with that other person, where you create that love and light, like, that is such a beautiful, ecstatic experience that it's like, it becomes part of your soul. It becomes something that's like, it's like emblazoned in eternity. Like, your soul is eternal, and then this thing becomes part of your soul, and like, this moment becomes eternal, and you experience this eternal moment with another, just through the simple, I want to call it like almost musical love you can experience, musical dance you can experience with another. So
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
We have an interesting question from Liz. How do you overcome times where you just want to watch a movie or a game? Do you even have them? I want to take part in changing the world. And then they said, I know a lot of bad things are happening here, but I'm still gaming. What would you suggest to do to be more productive?
Well, I think gaming definitely can become, I mean, first of all, recognize that gaming, especially modern games, are. My brother was a game, in the gaming industry, and he brought it to my awareness that most of the research in the R&D for these gaming companies is just how to get you addicted. So they're using all of the sort of subliminal triggers, if you will, the way that the lights flash, the way that the sounds work, the how frequently you're rewarded and what the rewards feel like, and all this stuff to get you deeply, deeply addicted to these games. Because the gaming companies know the more you play the game, the richer they get, and so they want this game to be as addictive as possible. So if you're playing any modern game, chances are it's highly addictive, and not in a good way. It's not like you're addicted because the game has all this intrinsic value. You're addicted because the game was designed to get you addicted, which is no better than like some hard drug that is basically evolved to get you addicted. Like heroin is like not a very natural substance. I know opium can be, but like the kinds of drugs you can buy on the street that are highly addictive are that way because they've kind of evolved to be that way. And the reason they get sold so much is because they're highly addictive. Same with video games. I would say get away from the game as best you can. Now, if you like watching movies, start watching movies that are in alignment with your soul's journey. So if you like, look, I can't do anything else but just sit under my blanket and watch a movie right now. If I'm not going to play video games, I'm going to eat nachos and watch a movie. That's okay. Let yourself do that. Pick a movie that inspires you. Pick a movie that you know will lead you to the end and make you feel like moving more into your life's real journey. So it's like when I was younger and I played football and I was feeling that like, oh, I just want to avoid the world and go watch a movie. I go watch Rocky. Next thing I know, by the end of the movie, I want to get to the gym or get out on the football field and like, face it again. So, what's your Rocky of the day? Like, The Matrix is great in some ways. Fight Club is good in some ways. Trying to think of other movies. Inception, like, really puts you in this amazing, thoughtful place. What's that? Interstellar is, such an inspiring movie. Contact is a great movie. What are some other inspiring movies, Shereen, that kind
Mm.
of take you to that next level place?
Oh, A Beautiful Mind was a good
Oh yeah,
one.
Beautiful Mind. Yep.
Dead Poet Society was one who like that like changed my life. I watched when I was really young, but it just changed my life.
Yep. And some Michelle here says frequency. Even our music has changed frequency in the past 10 years. It's like that's very so. Like if you're choosing a movie or media to immerse yourself in, see if you could pick that next level frequency. I think that song that we're talking about here, "Time in a Bottle," I think it's like next level frequency. I think it's such a beautiful song. It's got the frequency of
Hmm.
love, and that frequency is such a high frequency. And I think there's a number of movies out there that have that frequency. I think video games. I used to. I mean, man, when I was like a really young kid, yeah, of course, I was totally into Nintendo and video games and stuff like that. But as I've gotten older, I really am weary of them. And the reason I'm weary is because Garrett has to deal with enough technology as it is. But I also just see like how transparently um, addictive they are. That it's not bringing you to that higher emotional place. It's kind of keeping you stuck in that grinding place where you just want to like get to the next level or and I mean, don't we have enough of that in our regular lives to deal with without having to do it in video game land? But I mean,
I totally agree.
yeah,
So if you guys have any great movies that inspire you, feel free to chat them so that all
yeah,
of the fellow amazings who are watching can be inspired.
right. And I mean, go check out some of the videos I made because like that's what I tried to
Oh,
do.
that's
Like
true.
they're not movies. They're 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but they're like the intention behind them. I mean, gosh, they are movies. Half the videos I make are just ripping, scenes of other movies, and ripping like the best music from, I'm like using Hans Zimmer's Time and like, my favorite scenes of all movies of all time and splicing them together and trying to turn them into like this 5 minute ecstatic experience for
Yeah.
you, for me. Like, I mean, I did it for me too. Like, I enjoyed being in that. I mean, Rocky, even like one of my videos is like a bunch of Rocky clips, or at least one of them. So it's like, yeah, those clips, those moments, the music, the stuff, you can get that high vibration experience from it. And if you sit with that long enough, you might not feel like hiding under your covers anymore. You might actually feel like, okay, I'm ready to take on the world and do something with this newfound inspiration. So
Hmm.
put that in your cup.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, this was beautiful. Thank you guys so much for being with us on this juicy topic of time and love energy. Garrett, thank you for your
Yeah.
wisdom. Always so
Mm.
nourishing and wonderful to be in relationship with you, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Ditto, Sherini. And what else do we got here? Anything else? No? This is it? We done?
I think that's
I think
pretty
we
good,
did it.
man.
We
I'm
did pretty
feeling it.
good. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Solid.
So yeah, find that way to commune. I mean, this is, it takes a little stretch. Sometimes it's hard to find that person who will share communion with you. Um, Maybe lower your standards in terms of what their physical disposition is in their physical situation. And find that person that really would just be so delighted to share a moment of love and communion with you and start having those. Or if you are already in a family or in a relationship, it's like, okay, well, now's your chance. Like, listen to that song, "Time in a Bottle." Find
Yeah.
a way to transubstantiate your life into the spirit of that song where you are living these moments that you would live over and over again for eternity because they're so beautiful.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Until next time, my friends.